Hello, and welcome to the Woman to Woman TV show. It is always such an honor to be able to come before you all. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask you, grab a pen, call a friend so that they can tune in to the Woman to Woman TV show. We are so excited. We have a wonderful individual who's going to come and share with us some very exciting information. And before we get started with that, we're going to introduce our co-host today, and then we're going to introduce our guest for today. Okay, come on now. Grab your pen, call a friend so they can tune in to the Woman to Woman TV show. I'm your host, Jean Lockett.
And I'm Naima Latif.
And I'm Deborah Smith. Welcome.
And we have our guest today, Miss Reverend Alice J. Brown in the house.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure and certainly an honor to be with you today. I'm praising God that He gave me this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know about everybody else, but I have one thing that has struck me beyond anything after reading about you, and that is the fact that you have been married for 50 years. You don't even look that old.
I know. I said, well, now she married 50 years. She barely looks 50 years. How old were you, 2?
Well, I put it to you like this. If from her story, I would have been like, yeah, that is exactly when she got here. But you look good.
Thank you.
And we just thank you again for being here. But 50 years. Most people don't make it for 50 minutes. Right. That's a good 50 days, 50 months. But you're talking 50 years. Please tell us how.
You got some stories to tell, I know. Yes.
Well, a lot of them, but my husband and I made a commitment that we were going to remain married, that we would not be in and out of our relationship, that if we left, we were not coming back. And we didn't want our children to go through some of the things that we went through as we grew up in our households. So we made a conscious effort to work together, to deal with issues, because there are always issues. There's stuff always going on, but you look at the heart of the person. We all grow differently. We all have different experiences. Even though we're a couple, we're not the same person. I'm not his better half. I'm his better whole.
I like that.
Right.
Well, let me start taking notes now.
I don't declare that and he's not my better half, he's my better whole. I don't want half of a person in my relationship. I want a whole person. And so we just made that decision, but as I was sharing a little bit earlier, God blessed me. As a child, I prayed for a husband and I prayed for my family. I always wanted to be married. I always wanted children. And I grew up in the church. I was born and raised in the church. So I always prayed for what I wanted. And God just blessed me. And so I saw my husband as a child in visions as I would sleep. God always speaks to me in visions when I'm asleep. And so He showed him to me as an adult. He was living in another state. I don't know if he was in the state of Mississippi, which is his home state, or he was in the state of Illinois, which is his second home state. I lived in Florida. I was born and raised in Florida, and my husband came to Florida and went to high school where I was going to high school. And when my sister introduced him to me, I was a cheerleader. It was a Friday night. I was cheering, and she said that he was the person she had been talking about to me. As a matter of fact, her best friend, his sister-in-law, is the sister of her best friend. And so when she introduced him to me and I turned around and I looked at him, it was the lights around him was like a halo around his head. And I said to myself, to no one else, that's him. And he was the one I had been dreaming about. I can close my eyes now and tell you what he looked like. Oh, excuse me. But I can tell you what he looked like.
Just like it was
as
yesterday.
A child, just like it was yesterday, yes. And so when we did get together, when we started going together in high school, and he gave me his ring as the engagement ring and asked me would I consider being engaged with him, and I said yes I would. And we ended up starting our lives a little sooner than we had planned. I was 17 when we got married. I was pregnant with our daughter. and we had already planned to be married, so we just followed through. And the thing that was a blessing to me at that particular time, because we're talking about 1963 when we got married, but my mother said to me, you don't have to get married. And you know, back in that time, being a young lady pregnant, you had shotgun weddings.
Right.
And so my mother said I did not have to, but we wanted to, we had planned to. And our daughter will be 50 in May.
Oh, wow.
So God has blessed us to have 4 children. Our 2 daughters are 17 and 19 years older than our son. Our son is 3 years older than our youngest daughter. And so God has just blessed us. Not only do we have 4 children, we have 10 grandchildren, and we have 4 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
And all of our greats
That's
are
a lot.
sons, so I have equal number of 5 granddaughters, 5 grandsons, and I have 4 great-grandsons.
Oh,
That is a successful life.
And to say 50 years,
Yes.
would you say that y'all always got along? Would
Girl,
you say,
please.
honey, there was some moments?
There was plenty of
And
moments.
you said, because I made this commitment, I'm going to hold on to the Lord. have mercy.
she didn't say Alice in Wonderland.
Because people need to know that you're going to have your ups and your downs.
yes.
But like you said earlier, it is the true commitment
Yes,
that
yes.
you choose to
Yes.
have to stay in a marriage.
Yes. And as we were talking earlier, there were 3 words that came out. One was commitment, communication, and compromise.
Yes.
We are committed to the marriage, committed to our family, committed to each other. I'm not staying with a man just because I'm married to him. I must have a good relationship with him, and I want the same love, romance, and attention I had before we got married.
Yes.
So that's the commitment. I don't want to be, okay, that's my wife, you go over there and take care of the kids, and I'm going to do my other thing. I don't play that. And then the other one is the communication. It's very important that we talk to each other. We're not going to always agree. That is not going to happen. But we talk to each other. And then in that communication, you find a way to compromise. If he's going to have his opinion, you're going to have your opinion. So what is a win-win for both people, so that one person isn't getting his or her way and the other person just feeling like left out and hanging out. So we've worked that out. And then on both sides, we've had to make a decision, because either one of us could have walked out at any time and decided, because living together is not the easiest thing. He's a little milder mannered than I am. He's passive aggressive, which means that he's not going to fight with me, he's not going to argue with me, but he's going to find a way.
He just kind of won't do what you want.
Look, he's going to find a way.
They won't argue about
I am more of the aggressive personality, where I'm going to tell you what I feel, and if we have to duke it up, we will, but we don't, because we made that decision earlier, that we did not want our children to grow up in an environment where the parents was physically fighting each other.
It's not
So
good
that
at
was
all.
that was
Decision you have to
not
make.
going to work. My lips are sometimes I have to, and I teach my congregation, sometimes you just have to put your hands around your mouth, wrap something around your hands so your hands won't come down. So you can't open your mouth
Yes.
if you're the one that must just say something. But for me, I have to say what I have to say. I can't keep it in, but I'm learning how to, and it's still an ongoing process.
Yes.
So I'm learning how to put love in my voice, because sometimes I say what I say and people get offended because I'm very
Blunt.
You
blunt.
mean what you
I
say.
mean what I say,
But
and
you-
don't play with me.
You see how she took this, put some eyes in
Look,
place?
mean what I say and don't play with me, because I don't
Uh-huh.
believe in it. However, it is important, though, when you're working with people, that you bring your voice down, that they know that you're not being confrontational, because then you put
Patience.
them on the defensive, and if you put them on the defensive, you're not going to accomplish what you're looking for. So I'm learning, even in my relationship with my congregation, even in my relationship with my children, even in my relationship with my friends, to lower my voice, to make sure it's sounding loving and kind, and that I am being patient, that I am being tolerant, that I am having some understanding of the other person. I agree with something that Susan Taylor says when she was in charge of Essence. Everyone is not healthy enough to sit in the front row of your life.
Yes.
Does not mean you don't love them. You love everybody. Everybody.
Everybody.
But you may not like everything they are doing.
Right.
So I say to my children, I love you, but baby, I don't like what you do. Because we did not raise you this way. You make your choices, and I'm not the one that's going to throw good money after bad. So now whatever you choose to do, I will help you as long as God is guiding me to do that, as long as I realize that it's going to be a blessing for you. But I'm not going to throw my good money after you going out there acting a fool and doing stuff you know is not going to lead to the best actions for you.
Now,
So-
you pastor a congregation.
Yes, I do.
And your teachings are specific to what lifestyle?
We are part of Universal Foundation for Better Living. Most people in Chicago know it as Johnny Coleman's church. Christ Universal Temple is the church that I came out of. We're a New Thought, non-denominational organization. And Dr. Coleman was a part of Unity. She's an ordained Unity minister. Most people know Unity by the Daily Word. And she started her own organization June 14th, 1974. It started out as being Unity Foundation for Better Living, and then later she changed it to Universal Foundation for Better Living. So we're an international organization. I'm the pastor of the church in East Cleveland, Ohio, which is Living Truth Center for Better Living. I've been there for 8 years. My husband and I have a wonderful arrangement where he commutes between here and East Cleveland more so than I commute from there to Chicago, even though most of my congregation think I'm in Chicago every weekend, which is good, because then they're not bothering me. But we work that way because we have a home here. We never said we wanted to give up our home, and so God has blessed me to live in 2 cities. I live in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. I have an apartment. We have an apartment there. And I live in Chicago Heights, Illinois, where we have a home. And so it works well for me and for us. And so before I took the job as pastoring, and the position, I want to say more so than a job, because you're working for God, so it's not a job.
Right.
Yes.
But the position for God, my family, we discussed it together as a couple. We discussed it with our children, because I'm very involved in my children's lives. Not to the degree that I try to run their lives, because they have me as their mother and they have a lot of me in them, and they wouldn't let me if I tried. Because I don't let people run my life. And I think, and this is really a reason I think a lot of marriages don't survive, is there's too many people involved in the marriage. It is your friends, your family, they telling the wife what to do or the husband what to do when they can't even get their life in order.
Yes.
Right.
And a lot of times people allow other people to intervene in their relationships, and where my husband and I always decided that we would not allow others to intervene. It would be the 2 of us. We would make our decisions in raising our children. We would not allow the children to play us against the other one.
Very critical.
They would come and they would ask me, and I would say, "What did your father say?" And that would be like, Then they would go ask him, and he would say, "What did your mother say?" And it would be like, But we never allowed them to play us one against the other one. Even with our grandchildren, they cannot do that. And our great-grands are babies pretty much so. So we haven't, the oldest one is 7, and his birthday is the day after mine. So we travel together for our birthdays, and whenever I'm going to conference, I take Patrick with me. We started doing that a couple of years ago when he was 5. And so we took him to Canada, we took him to Phoenix, Arizona to a conference, we took him to San Antonio to a conference. This year our conference will be here in Chicago, and then we're going to go to Alaska and celebrate our birthdays in Alaska this year.
Oh,
Nice.
great.
Very nice.
Great.
You know what, and I'm so glad that you actually brought that up, because that was going to be my question in regards to how did you all raise your children, because we find that a lot of couples, that's their biggest issue. The children are able to play one against the other one. The mom wants to feel that she's the greatest mom in the world by doing everything that her child wants to do. Because if she does that, then I'm the greatest mom ever. And so I see why you and your husband look so good, because no matter what the issues may have been you all truly worked together. And
Yes.
that was something, as you said, started off. So that was
Right.
something that you all did in the beginning. So if it were to say to individuals who are either getting ready to get married or those who are married, because my husband and I, we come to realize even in our counseling, there are individuals who's together for 15, 20 years, and after the counseling sessions, they come to realize that they were just two individuals who
Right.
was living in the same
Right,
household.
right.
But now they're coming together and knowing how to be husband and wife. So what would be your take or your share for 50, come on y'all, 50 years? That's a long, one person, 50 years, that's a long time. And the Lord allows, I look forward to that. But what encouragement would you give?
One of the things I would say to people as they are contemplating, because I don't perform marriages where I have not counseled the couple.
Oh, that's good.
I would not marry a couple simply because they ask me to.
Right.
Right.
I had a couple that I almost was not going to marry, but I will do more than one counseling session. And if I get to a point where I know the counseling is useless, they can get married, but I may not be the one to perform the ceremony. And so what I say, though, is you have to learn how to work together. It is a partnership.
Yes.
I am a pastor, but I can't stand the word. I don't even want to say the word. So I push it out of my mind what I hear a lot of people talk about. And my husband and I did not come into the relationship with him being in charge of me, because nobody's in charge of me but God. My parents raised me. I was a full-grown 17-year-old, still acting as an adult woman. And I don't believe in a man running me because he think he's a man and because he put his pants on that he's in charge of me. That does not work. We work together. Who takes care of which part of the household, and we didn't have his job and my job. My job wasn't inside and his was outside, because I'd rather be outside rather than inside. So we decided, and we talked before we got married. Even though we were teenagers, we knew we wanted to be married, so we always talked to each other, and we planned our lives. Thank God he didn't tell me how many children he wanted, because I was never going to have more than 4. And so he wanted 6, and my thing was 4, but he never said that to me. But later it worked out that we have the 4 children, but I've always felt it's a partnership. He was more mature than I when we got married, because he's almost 5 years older than I am. So he was more mature. So he knew more about life than I did. He was the head of his household even as a young man, because his father had left the household and he was the only son in the household, so he helped his mother. So he knew more about life. He knew more about managing money. He knew more about taking care of a family than I did, because I came out of my mother's house, even though I'm the eldest, and I had to help take care of my brothers and my sisters, but I still was a lot of things I did not know. So when we got married, he took care of paying the bills. He took care of managing things. He cooks as well as I do and better. He cleans house as well as I do and better. I work outside with him and helping to keep the yard together. And so we just worked together in whatever it took. If I was in school, he took care of the children. If he was in school, I took care of the children. So we always just worked together, and we talked, and we knew the kind of life we wanted to live, and we always knew that we were striving to do better than our parents. Our parents helped us. They were wonderful parents, but you know, all of us have our issues. We have ours, excuse me. We have ours, even though we're not perfect people, by no means. And so what we did, though, is we kept talking and communicating. And when I got to the point that I did not like him talking, the girls and I, when it was time for him to pay the bills, we would go run and hide, because then he would talk to me about how much this is and how much that is. And you got to stop doing this, you got to stop doing that. And it was like, oh, Jesus, I can't take this. Help me
It's
out.
too much. That's
So
too much
what I
stress.
did is I learned, though, how he taught me how to take care of the bills. I took them and I paid them, and then once I thought I had done everything, and I went and bought some shoes or a dress or something. Then I realized after I had made the purchase that I had not paid everything. It was like, oh. So I gave it back to him. I said, okay, you take it back, because I knew that wasn't going to work. But then I kept working at it, and I learned how to do it. So now I'm the one that's primarily doing it, but we do things together. And so what is my advice to people? My advice to people is keep other people out of your relationship. That's number one.
That's a good one.
Number two, make sure you really want to be married, because two people living together, there is no equal yoke. I don't believe that, because we're two different individuals. We come with two different mindsets. We come from different backgrounds. We come from different educational. Our values are very similar, but they're not exactly the same.
Right.
However, we both came from a God-fearing family. We both went to church. We both believed in God. There was a time that I went to church that he stayed at home. As long as he didn't bother me, I did not care. If I needed him to support me in church, he came. Then he decided one New Year's Day he was going to go to church. And I was like, thank you, God. And he
That's it.
started attending church. Now he'll beat me going to church. If I don't go, he goes. So I think that people should come together and not let other people tell them what they should or should not do. Because we're individuals.
Yes.
And everything does not work the same for everybody.
And they have to look beyond the physical.
Yes. Yes.
It's
yes.
a lot of times that you build a relationship on the physical.
Yes.
And when you're going past that, it's much more than that.
And you know what I tell
The
my
physical might not be there all the time.
Look, you got that right. And I tell my congregation, though, there's a difference between love and lust.
Yes.
And we don't talk about it. I'm hot, passionate for him because he looks good to me or she looks good to me. And right now, our physical hormones are turned on. But when they cool off, and they will,
Then what do you have?
That's right.
if it's only for the physical, then you really don't have a relationship. But if it's not just the physical and you genuinely care for the other person, then when you go through those periods and times, it could be a health issue where the physical cannot be a part of the relationship at that time. If you love that person, then you are not there for just, and you won't go outside looking for it. Right. You will be able to work within what you have, and then you will be able to move forward in the relationships. And the other thing is sometimes people make mistakes, and there are things that happen in relationships. And you have to be willing to say, and Madia, believe it or not, Madia helped me with this one. You write down the qualities of the individual. If the person has more good qualities than negative qualities, you stay in the relationship.
Yes.
Now, if there are more bad qualities than positive qualities, you may want to leave the relationship. So you have to make that decision as to when situations show up in your relationship. Is this a, I don't know the word, I know the word, but it's not coming right now. Is this a break? Is this a break it kind of a situation?
Okay.
Is this a break
it or make it.
breaker? You're right. Is this a break? A deal breaker.
Yeah.
Is this a deal breaker? Now, if it's not a deal breaker, but it's kind of close,
Right.
like right at the border, and you hurting and you in pain and you crying because something happened that done.
But that's
where
where that commitment
That's where the
comes in.
commitment.
Well, do you
comes.
think a thing like infidelity tends to be the deal breaker for most marriages?
It can be. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't
Right.
have to be.
Right.
It can be. But you have to make a decision. What was this? You see, both parties must take ownership. We both must take ownership. I know a lot of ladies who don't want their husband to come near them, who don't want their husband to have any physical contact with them after they have been married. And then they're going to get upset when his eyes go someplace else. And they're going to go there anyway, whether you want him or not. And it's up to him to have control over his own self.
Exactly.
However,
Right.
Exactly.
it depends again. My dear helped with, you see, there's a lot of wisdom in some of the things we watch. Everything we watch on TV doesn't have a lot of wisdom. But there's some things that has a lot of
can learn
wisdom.
some things, yeah.
And so you decide, is this person worth me working through whatever the situation is? Why did the situation happen? And can I work through this? Now, if you cannot work through it without committing murder and going to jail, then you walk out the door.
And you have to seek God.
Yes, you do.
You have to.
I totally agree with
Now,
that.
speaking of seeking God, because you said something that was critical that I believe is necessary in making that marriage commitment. You said you had visions of your husband early on, and I believe
did.
that when something is spiritually right, and
Yes.
marriage is a spiritual union,
Yes.
you get some kind of a spiritual sign. You get some kind of confirmation from God. I know my late husband had said, of course, that he saw visions of me before we got married, so I looked for that confirmation. What do you think a person should look for in terms of some type of spiritual confirmation if they're considering getting married?
One of the things I think we should always do is pray.
Yes.
That's the way we communicate with God, is through prayer. So with your asking God the questions, ask questions. Is this the one? God has a plan for us. God knows the plan for us. So if we ask God the question, Father, is this the one that's going to be the long-lasting relationship? Is this really love or is this lust? And then I have to be honest with myself. And if I choose to say it's lust, then I should really be honest with the other person. And that's not necessarily what we would teach you in church, but since this is life and this is what happens, you may make that decision that I'm going to involve myself in this relationship, but there are responsibilities because out of that can come children. And if you make that decision that this is not love, and I don't want, and for young men, oh my God, I have grandsons, and it amazes me. I don't love her like that, but you was trying to get with her like that.
Right.
But you don't love her like that?
Isn't that something to
No
like
one
really
teaches
think
young
about
people that if you are physically intimate, that is a tie that you create.
Yes.
And if you didn't plan for it to be permanent, why are you creating a soul tie?
That is
Because
correct.
That lust is overkill at that point. 9 times out of 10, I think I've said this before. When the person gets pregnant, they didn't think about they were going to have a child. They were
That's
thinking
right.
about that lust.
That's right.
At
that
time.
feeling for the moment.
Yes.
As I often say, a moment of pleasure can bring you a lifetime of pain.
Oh, yes, Lord.
You not careful, honey. That moment,
That's right.
this is split second.
That's right.
That
That's
you
right.
feeling
That's
good.
right. That's
but
right.
then you sitting here and you crying and complaining for the rest of your
That's
life.
right.
You know,
That's
because
right.
you done
That's
made
right.
some decisions. But
Yes.
you all are hearing that right here at the Woman to Woman TV show. Y'all keep on sitting down, feeling like you won't be excited if you want to. Right. But I'm going to tell you the excitement that feels good, and it's called freedom.
Oh,
If
yes.
nothing else, I agree. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. But if you tune in on Mondays and Fridays at 4 p.m. at the EvanstonTV.com, Channel 6, at www.ectv.com, you will be able to see our shows. We want you all to tune in. We want you all to give us a call and let us know what you think at 773-609-4867. We are just so excited. We're talking about marriage. If you are married, God have mercy. I hope that everything that you're doing is right. If you're not married, but you're contemplating marriage, Lord have mercy. I hope you listen to this show. And if you just don't want to get married, Lord show no have mercy. Then I hope you stay and celibate. And I want everybody to take 5 seconds to share what they want to say before it's time for us to go off air. Come on, baby.
Well, I just want to maybe ask one last quick question as one who's in between husbands.
And
What
we got
advice
seconds
would you
here.
give? What advice would you give for somebody looking at a past of a person? What are some deal breakers that you should not consider someone who's going to
That they
be
married.
married?
Number 1, see whether they're married or not. Number 2, make sure it's a person you love and that you can be with that person regardless. Number 3, you might want to check on their credit because their credit will impact your life. And I'm serious because in today's time, everything happens around these credit scores. And so you want to make sure that it's a person that's compatible with you, similar values. They may not be the exact same, but they certainly must be very close.
We got to get ready and we have to go. Boy,
I'm excited.
Hallelujah.
I've been with mine for a long time.
so we're talking 50 years here. We're talking 20-some years. I've been doing it for 2, but I thank God for
Yes,
it.
yes.
You have watched it here at the Woman to Woman TV show. Marry God, then you'll have the husband you're supposed to have, the wife you're supposed to have. Thank you. We love you. We hope to
Amen.
see you all again. Goodbye.